Hi guys, it's Tom here. I said I was going to make some videos about trying to discern the difference between INFP and INFJ, especially if you're someone who has recently got into Myers-Briggs theory and you feel conflicted between these two types, which is the common mistype between all of the types of Myers-Briggs, and it's quite easy to see why. Now, being someone who mistyped themselves in quite a spectacular fashion and ran to the internet to declare themselves before fully understanding the intricacies of Myers-Briggs, I thought it would be fun and interesting to now relate back to you guys how I've actually come to the understanding of my type. So, INFP and INFJ, they look quite similar on paper. And also, when you look at the actual initials, the only discernible difference seems to be the J and the P between the two. So this is what I'm going to try and focus on in this video, because there's so much to talk about and I could just go on talking forever and ever and ever. So I'm just going to focus on this concept of the judging and the perceiving aspects, and we'll go from there and see what happens. Okay, so INFP has the P at the end, INFJ has the J at the end. Now, the mistake I made when I first got into Myers-Briggs and I initially tested as INFP, even though my judging and perceiving results were almost 50-50, I looked at INFJ and immediately saw the J and judging, and I was like, oh no, that's not me. I'm not a judgmental person. I'm not some kind of, I'm not really so hard-lined in my views, I took it too literally. I took it kind of in the classical sense of the word judgment. Now, when it comes to INFP and INFJ, this is where I believe the most confusion arises between the two. It's this relationship between judging and perceiving that trips people up until they start to look into the cognitive functions and understand where these elements of perceiving and judgment actually, what relation they play to these two types. Because once you start to do that, you understand that an INFP who has the dominant function of introverted feeling actually has a strong judging aspect to their personality, and an INFJ who has the dominant function of introverted intuition has a strong perceiving aspect to their personality. So already there seems to be a contradiction. Now, it's not quite, but it's just the way it looks. So I'm going to try and explain that. An INFP goes out into the world and they have the dominant function of introverted feeling. Now, introverted feeling is like core values. It is internal. It is an aspect of themselves, and I was writing a comment out recently and I've realised that I can explain this stuff much better through words than I can talking. I wrote out a comment to someone in one of my videos and I tried to explain this using the metaphor of the foundation stones for a building. Imagine an INFP's strong internal value system as almost being foundation stones in a building. So an INFP will go out into the world and they'll use the auxiliary function they have of NE, extroverted intuition, to perceive information and data from the world around them, from different environments, from people, and then use their dominant function of introverted feeling as a filter to see if all of this new information that is coming to the INFP, if it relates to their strong core values or their foundation stones. Do they want to use this information to almost build their house, build their reality, or do they want to discard it and dismiss it? So if the phrase, "does this feel right to me," resonates strongly with you, that could be an indication that maybe you're an INFP. But on the same token, INFJs also have quite a strong aspect of feeling to themselves, which I'll get into. But for the INFP, it's about how they perceive information, how they relate information to their core values. So an INFP will have a very strong sense within themselves of what is right and what is wrong. and they will use this sense of what they feel internally to then categorize the outside world and find their place, find what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what kind of people are going to be their best friends, what people are not going to be their best friends, and do it in that way. Now, you compare this to the INFJ and how the INFJ does this. The INFJ's dominant function is introverted intuition. Okay? And you'll maybe sometimes hear this described as being almost magic, because people aren't even sure how it works, and it always seems to be on. But basically it's about kind of being able to see patterns and information, and it's quite future. It's based in the future as well, trying to figure out the future. A lot of it is perception. You know, sometimes you feel things in your gut. There's this kind of a strong intuitive ability. And it's also just kind of knowing how maybe things fit into place. That's the way it kind of works, and it's kind of always on. And an INFJ will try and understand all of this information that seems to be coming to them through their introverted intuition by utilising the auxiliary function, which is the second function, of FE, which is extroverted feeling. So whether this is talking to people, because INFJ is said to be the most extroverted of the introverts, is going out and talking to people, debating, trying to see things from all angles, trying to understand another person's point of view, and seeing how this correlates and fits in with the pattern that they're starting to construct in their mind using their introverted intuition. So it's more of a way to see patterns in the world and to see what fits in and what doesn't, and build it up, almost like a spider's web, where the INFP already kind of has that idea of what they believe and what they don't believe pre-existing within them, and they're seeing how things in the outside world relate to that. So that's already kind of the difference. It might seem kind of simplistic, and maybe it's not making enough sense to you at the moment, but as the more you go into this, the more it'll start to make sense, and you'll start to understand and see how it works. Now the judging aspect, how does that come in to the INFJ? Where does that fit in? Well, as an INFJ starts to build up all this information within themselves, they need to assess and understand to see if it fits in and correlates to what they're thinking with their intuition, but also from other people's points of view. And this is where their function of introverted thinking can come in, which is designed to be able to pinpoint certain things and piece together how a system works. And maybe an INFJ does this through reading lots of books. Maybe they do it through dismantling things and seeing how it all fits together. And it's this way of assessing information that maybe they intuitively feel, to see if it's right, if it's information that they should hold on to. To give an example, a INFJ might get into a discussion with someone and they feel pretty certain that what they're trying to tell this person is correct, and they can be almost quite straightforward and headstrong in doing this. But if the other person can intelligently counter the INFJ and provide some information that maybe the INFJ has never come across before, the INFJ can sit back and go, you know what, actually, yeah, I think this person has provided me information that seems to be more intelligible than my own. And so they'll take that into their internal system of building up patterns and discard something else, and then develop maybe a greater understanding of something. This is why INFJs, a lot of INFJs, and I've seen this, seem to have this struggle for understanding everything, the search for meaning, seeing meaning in everything, needing to see meaning in all things, you know? And this can be very broad, it can be very specific, it can be, you know, for me it's almost exists in nearly everything. And the amount of jobs that I've gone through in my life already is ridiculous because of this not feeling that there was a meaning behind the job, you know? So, yeah, I think that's all I'll say for now. Let me know if that's helping clear anything up, or if it all still sounds like a complete mess. I think one of the problems with MBTI, when people start to get more interested in it and start to understand cognitive functions and things, it can at first almost look like algebra, you know? It's it can be kind of confusing, and I think that's why a lot of people do get confused. So it is kind of a balance of being able to understand the cognitive theory and see things in the big picture and relate them to your whole being, your whole life, and seeing how it fits in, which is where a lot of metaphorical kind of explanations can help people. But it is kind of down to you, and you have to look at your own life and see how this fits in and be honest with yourself about how you process all this information and go about it. I'll just leave you with one last example, and again I'm doing this in quite a broad way, and there is no absolutes because there is always going to be differences between people even within these specific types. But this kind of just popped into my head before I was about to make this video. I want to use the concept of animal rights because I have a friend, a woman who I'm pretty sure is probably an INFP. I'm not 100%, but she is very passionate about animal rights, very passionate, especially when it comes to dogs, you know. And she's a very gentle soul, very nice, very kind. But when it comes to anything that crosses over into that category of where she feels that someone is harming an animal or harming a dog, wow, she can change, completely change, and become so fiery and passionate about it. And I think this is a good example between INFP and INFJ. Because let's just talk about animal rights in a broad context, okay? If maybe you're an INFP might say, I think it's wrong to kill an animal. I think it's always wrong to kill an animal. They have as much right as any other living creature on this planet to live out their life without ever having any interference within it. And I believe that's wrong, and I just do, you know? And that's where I stand. And then maybe you have an INFJ would say, and I'll use myself as an example for this, yes, I agree, I really feel I have a strong connection with animals, and I also think they should be respected and cared for. But I think there are times, maybe, let's say, a family who are living out somewhere in the woods, and they go out and they will hunt occasionally, maybe every winter, and they'll hunt deer or elk. And they're not doing it for sport, they're doing it for food. And I think that if you find an animal, maybe a deer or an elk, that maybe is coming to the end of its life, and you respect it, you can kill it in a humane way, a way where it doesn't really know what's happening, it's just done, it's clean, and you take responsibility for taking the animal back, for preparing it, for slaughtering it, for utilising its life and not wasting its life, you know, for the benefit of your family, and for allowing its life to help nourish the lives of others, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. An INFP, on the other hand, and again, I'm being very broad here, so don't take it as me trying to categorise things or stereotype people, might just think, you know, even though I understand that I still couldn't do it, I still couldn't pull the trigger, I still couldn't kill the animal because it just crosses over from my internal, you know, right and wrong system. So, you know, whereas the INFJ maybe sees it from multiple perspectives and their empathy arises out of that, an INFP's empathy and kindness is more from a very clear sense of right and wrong in their own opinion of what they believe. So there we go. I'll just leave that with you as just an example, a very broad metaphor, and again, there's so much more, but this is just the start of it. If you found this helpful, if you disagree with anything I've said, please comment and leave your opinions below, and I'll read them and probably type out extremely long-winded responses. Alright, thanks guys, see you soon.